Crickety crack, what's up, Stitt-Heads? We are back. Oh, I just didn't even mean to make that rhyme. But, anyways, man, we got a whole bunch of good episodes that's been coming out lately, and we've been bitching about certain little countries and a lot of geopolitics and a lot of things. And this kind of involves politics, but we're going to take a little different approach today. And I want to get into some of the weirdness of disclosure and what's going on. Aliens, are they real? Are they demons? Is space fake and gay? Why are they telling us now? What are they distracting us from? So, one of the guests has been on multiple times in the past, and I'm trying not to keep it too long like we did the last time between episodes. Welcome back, Bradley Lail from the Awaken podcast. How you doing, brother?
What's up, buddy? It's good to be here. I'm happy to be talking Stitt with you again. I love the show, man, and I love just hanging out with you and talking with you. It's always a good chat, dude.
Thanks, brother. I don't even know what the chat's going to be half the time. It's like, hey, whatever ADD thing pops in my head next, let's go there. So, yeah, dude, you've been
Sure.
doing some episodes on, disclosure, and I know you've been into like the strangeness of UFOs aren't always nuts and bolts. And, it can be metaphysical things and orbs and energies and plasmas. And, it's weird they're talking about some of that stuff now, but it's also weird they're like putting out the propaganda of like Disclosure Day and kind of still giving people like the idea of like the nuts and bolts thing, which my thoughts are that's more our military stuff we don't know about. And they're trying to keep the woo woo stuff on the down low. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think they're working with them. I think that there's factions of the government that have been working with aliens for forever. And now, aliens, just to be clear to everybody out there, aliens are demons. There's no doubt about it in my mind. That's just what they are. And the reasoning behind that, and I can give you a quick rundown of it, is when you look at like the book of Enoch and Uriel, the archangel Uriel is talking to he's talking to Enoch, and he's explaining Enoch's like confused. He's like, how come the evil is still on the earth? How come God doesn't just get rid of them? And he said, Uriel's telling Enoch, he's saying you can't just get rid of them because it would cause chaos in the world. There has to be some form of a balance. And what happens with evil, they're imprisoned essentially in different levels of the planet and also space or the stars or whatever you want to call it. And he describes these different levels of imprisonment for fallen angels. And now there's like Azazel, for example, he's in the crust of the earth. And then there are demons who are imprisoned below the mountains. And then there are demons who are imprisoned in the abyss. And then there are demons who are in Tartarus, which is like complete darkness. Now the abyss is more like hell as we know it. And
Mm-hmm.
then Tartarus is more like just complete darkness. And then he's saying that there are the cosmos can imprison certain fallen angels as well. So Azazel and all the ones that taught, the fallen angels that rebelled against God, they're not even the worst ones, is what he was saying to Enoch.
They're just the
And
closest
so
ones. Yeah, that's like your local gangbanger, not the crime
yeah,
leader.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're not the leaders. And so what he is essentially saying is like, but demons are different because demons are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. So they're neither fallen angel nor human. So they have no resting place. This is where you get the idea, no rest for the wicked, right?
Yes,
And so
yes.
and so they're wandering spirits on the earth. They're always looking for vessels. They're always looking for corporeal overlays or corporeal like structures. You know what I mean? Just basically material that they can build into or take over in order to exist in reality in some way as we know it. Now they exist, but
Yeah.
they exist more in an energy form that's
Like a
constantly
host
moving.
parasite kind of thing. Like a host and a
Yeah.
parasite need each other. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's essentially where my mindset is with it. Aliens are demons. They are the wandering spirits of the Nephilim that are looking for rest, that they get no rest. Now, what happens with this prison planet system is, and this is again from Uriel talking to Enoch, and he's saying there's going to be a time for judgment, and that there has to be a buildup of negative energy, and the righteous souls of earth and also the righteous souls of the dead cry out for help to the Lord.
Mm.
Please take care, get rid of these negative energies on this earth. And that's when judgment day comes and gets rid of all the evil from the earth. And so that's essentially what's going on. And I think that there are factions of the US government who have been working with demons for forever. They're getting advancements in technologies and medicines and all the other stuff in exchange for human vessels and blood and bovine reproductive organs so they can create hybrid beings to try to inhabit this earth. So whenever it comes to disclosure and all that stuff, like we'll never get that because it's just like the Epstein files. People are implicated in that.
Yeah.
Imagine if you found out, oh, all these billionaires and oligarchs and people who've been running the world have been, making these sacrifices to these entities in order to gain some status. If you think about like Bill Gates or somebody like that who get status all of a sudden, they come out of nowhere and they invent computers, or whatever the case is. And
now he's not even known for computers. Now he's the vaccine guy and the climate change guy. And you're like, bro, stay in your lane. What the hell are you,
Yeah.
I don't need Neil deGrasse Tyson might be smarter than this thing, but he can't rebuild a carburetor for me. So shut the fuck up and stay in your lane, bro.
Right. So my point is though, is, we're never going to get disclosure from that just alone.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is there's a group of people, like you see David Grush and you see Lou Elizondo and you see all these people who are going out there with these task forces and they're going out in the media and they're saying, we need disclosure and it's coming and all this other stuff. And what they're doing, what a task force essentially is, it's an appointment by Congress or congressional oversight body to investigate, or sometimes the president to investigate certain things. And so that's all they are. That's what David Grush is a part of. He's a part of this task force with Anna Paulina Luna and all these people to essentially go and investigate why there's such a disconnect. Why, so like President Trump, for example, is like, why can't we get information? And he wants to know why we can't information. So you appoint these people to go and investigate. And what they're determining with these different task forces are that there are people in different factions of the government that are keeping information from us. They're keeping information from Congress and all this other stuff. And it's really just a big circle jerk is what it is, because these people in Congress are almost solely the people who can change the law, who can make disclosure happen for everybody. But it's never going to happen because what essentially Congress a long time ago with the Atomic Energy Act of like 1946 or 47, I can't remember what year it was, ended up being changed in 1954, again in 1969. It's gone through a couple of revisions, but the initial 1946 Act basically required that Congress create these statutes that the president can't just go in and declassify things from the Department of Energy.
Because he's a guy that's like here and gone. Yeah.
Yeah. Because most of the stuff that's in, that's like top secret, that's compartmentalized information about disclosure and all that stuff, it is energy, because that's what these things are. These things are energy. They're plasma beings, and they're anomalous beings, and they're always over these nuclear facilities and all these things. That's the Department of Energy's realm.
Interesting. John G. Trump was involved in that, getting all of not Epstein. What's his name? Tesla's stuff. The uncle of Donald Trump wasn't he one of the guys that and that's energy and frequency, vibration, blah blah blah. And you just also made me think of like that era of time where, okay, you're talking about nuclear energy and things, and whether nukes are real or not or whatever, who cares, right? To put that discussion just to the side for a second, because that's a legit discussion. But put that to the side, there is something weird that like we're getting this disclosure now where there's all this threat of like Iran can't have a nuke and we'll bomb them to hell and blah blah blah, and they're giving us disclosure now. But then also around the time of Roswell and 3 Mile Island and not 3 Mile Island, whatever, these testing all the nuclear bombs, that's when a lot of this alien stuff popped up too. It's almost like they're just recycling or something. I don't know. It's weird.
Well, disclosure, just the name disclosure is fake, because in the National Security Act, I'm sorry, not the National Security Act, the Atomic Energy Act, it specifically says any kind of disclosure is punishable by death. Okay, so anybody who works for the Department of Energy, they're never talking, because by their laws, by their internal rules, and I mentioned this on one of my episodes, how they live by this fraternity. Like that rule that punishable by death was amended in 1969. It was taken out, and it was basically punishable by life imprisonment or something along those lines. But this is where the G-men and all that stuff comes into play, because you have this group of people. Now think about it. You got these old heads that are in there. They're 60 years old, 70 years old. You and I go to work for the Department of Energy, and they tell you, you can't do this. If you do, your life will end. Right. So that it's like this fraternity of like, almost like a baseball, you know, how when Major League Baseball, if a pitcher hits one of their best batters, the next pitcher that comes out from the other team is going to retaliate and hit the other best batter,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's not an official rule of MLB, but it's kind of well known. It's a fraternal rule. Like, okay, we understand that if our guy gets hit, somebody's going to get hit on their team,
Like an
right?
unspoken agreement. Yeah, yeah.
Right. It's an unspoken agreement, and so that's what happens with the DOE is that everything is punishable by death. Things that if you and I worked there and I said, I got this really cool idea about something energy related, by law, that is classified in a system called restricted data system, or formerly restricted data. Eventually, if it gets declassified within the DOE, which again, this system of classification is not the same as national defense classification, which is like secret and top secret and
Mm-hmm.
above those different clearances.
Need
So
to know basis. Yeah.
yeah, you get read in on certain programs, and they're called special access programs. This is what Lou Elizondo did. He read people into special access programs. So Lou Elizondo and David Grush, they're national security. Everything that they talk about and think about, and everything's Department of Defense, national security, intelligence, that kind of stuff. They're not taking into consideration, or they know about it, but they're not taking into consideration the fact that Department of Energy, Department of Interior are two of the biggest players. And they're not talking about this. When, for the last 7 years, you've seen these disclosure hearings in Congress where people get in front of the internet talking about, oh, I know a guy who knows a guy who's seen this recovered crash system or whatever. And you get David Fravor and all these guys who go in there and they're like, we saw this thing on camera. And everybody who's asking questions is asking about national security. But when is the last time you saw anybody from the Department of Energy there? When is anybody from the Department of Interior who oversees volcanoes and the ocean and the coastline and places like that are,
Great point.
national parks and stuff like that? You don't see them. Well, if the Department of Energy oversees nuclear facilities, if the Department of Interior oversees like the Grand Canyon and all these other places, which people see UFOs flying into volcanoes and mesas and all this other stuff, how
Mm-hmm.
come these people aren't lined up in front of Congress answering these questions? Well, the answer is that nothing will ever be done. It's just a show. It's a kabuki theater, right? It's nothing's ever going to be done, because that would mean that I keep calling it the National Security Act, the Atomic Energy Act would have to be abolished. They'd have to get rid of it. And the only way to do that is from Congress. And then the president signs off on it. But all these old heads in Congress are all like, from a media standpoint, somebody like Brett Baer from Fox News is going to go, well, we need security. Why would you want to get rid of the national, or the Atomic Energy Act? And so you have all these old people going, no, we want the Atomic Energy Act. This is national security. It's the most important thing in the world. And so there are people in Congress who will never repeal the act or get rid of it, abolish it, in order to have real disclosure. So what I was just saying about this different chain, the president can declassify just about anything he wants within the scope of national security, anything in DOD and all that stuff. When it comes to Department of Energy, it takes an act of Congress literally to get any kind of information. This is why, like if you think about grand juries, this is why the JFK files have never come out. This is why the Martin Luther King Jr. files have never come out. It's because it's a grand jury. And what that means is the president can't go in there and request information from the grand jury. It's sealed. It's protected. So that means that the president just can't go in there and declassify things. He needs Congress. And even if Congress was to approve, for example, the statutes or whatever they have that would abolish the Atomic Energy Act, then again, the president would have to approve it, and also the Supreme Court would have to approve it. So then all three branches of the government would have to approve something. And so all the secrets are essentially buried within the DOE. So remember when Obama bought a bunch of ammo and through the DOE? That's the kind of stuff that goes on, because because presidents can't go in and declassify information from the DOE. They can't declassify anything.
It's a
And
good
again,
back door. Yeah.
yeah. And so again, if and Lou Elizondo knows this, and so does David Grush. They have to
Mm-hmm.
know. That's the only,
Well, what
like,
about
they have to know this.
what's his name? Tim Burchett? Wasn't he the one that was on Rogan a while back? And he was talking about, it looks like there's more evidence that they're coming from underwater and stuff. And see, that's, it's all weirdly related with all these damn things going on at the same time. It's like, it's a conspiracy theorist dream and nightmare because it's like, we know secretly somehow all this shit that's popping off at the same time. Israel and Iran and some biblical prophecy trying to be manufactured. We got AI data centers and surveillance systems coming up everywhere right now. We got alien disclosure. We got threats of nuclear weapons. And we're like, there's something Epstein with Zorro Ranch and like all the weird science stuff going on there. Even if aliens are real, like you said, possibly trading, information and medicine, things like that. Like that's why maybe they're not talking about Zorro Ranch. And just to bring it all together, I'm just saying, like, with what you're saying, it's so discombobulated between the government. It's like all these different companies and groups are all in on these things together to where even if you investigated one, the other is just going to go burn whatever files while they're killing time while they're next in line to get nobody, you can't just grab one guy, bring him to the table and get justice. It's going to take decades to get a disclosure of any real kind, which begs the question, like, why are they just kind of giving us this smoke and mirrors if we know that we're not going to get real disclosure? Like, what are your thoughts on why now?
A lot of this stuff too, you got to remember that they have big budgets, right? A lot of these national, Department of Energy has huge budgets, and so there's other organizations they funnel money into the Department of Energy for these, top secret programs and such. So it's a big industry business as well. Like, disclosure is an industry business for these people too, because if secrecy is the rule of law, like for these people, then that's how they continue to make money. I think of it like this. If all of the conspiracy theories come out today, it would put all of the conspiracy theorists out of business.
Right.
Right. And so, like, it would be like nothing for conspiracy theorists to talk about. It's the same way what's going on with like people who've been talking about UFOs and all this other stuff. It's like, well, that's it. Where do we go from here? You know what I mean? And they don't know what to do with their time and energy other than just talk about some of the files that's been released and all that. But essentially, it took the wind out of these people to release some of these files and start admitting. Now, those files are a joke, right? None of it's all garbage. You can get some of this stuff offline. People send me stuff all the time that are way, way more interesting photos and videos and drawings and stories than what the Department of War is putting out on the war.gov/UFO. So what I'm trying to say is it's a business. There's money tied in. There's secret projects that's going on that's creating these secret weapons and these secret planes and these secret, remember, they have remote viewing programs and all this other stuff that goes on. So if you start talking about all this stuff, you start declassifying this, think about the people that it puts out of business. I mean, we're talking people who make $250,000, $300,000 a year. They're going to, not be able to pay. Yeah, they're not going to be able to pay their mortgage. They're not going to be able to go to Lake Tahoe on the weekends or have their second house at the lake or whatever. You know what I mean?
Which is funny because the MK Ultra stuff they're disclosing as well now too. And you're like, why would the government all of a sudden be just telling all their dirty secrets? It's like the old, X-Files. I want to believe, and then it should be a comma and say, but now the government told me about it. I don't want to believe anymore. That's the weird fishy part about it. It's like the secrecy was kind of the fun part. Like you said, it took the wind out of some of these people because then, if Batman had no more bad guys in Gotham City to clean the city up with, then there's no point for having the Batman. If we cured cancer tomorrow, there's no point in cancer research or there's whatever. So yeah, like you said, there's money, and they just keep dangling us like a carrot on a stick.
Yeah, but I think at this point that we are going through an awakening. Like,
yes,
especially in 2024 through 2025 to 2026, where we were going through an awakening, and there's a reason for that, and that's because of solar flares. There was some solar flares that were hitting Earth for a couple of years straight. We went through what's called solar maximum, and which is essentially giant globs of plasma that were being spewed at the Earth. And while that was happening, it was squishing the magnetosphere down and allowing more plasma to flow in through the poles, which is why we saw the auroras down in like Texas and Mexico and Hawaii and places like that.
Right. I remember that.
Because
Yeah.
the poles were being squished by the plasma that was flowing in, and that plasma, when it come in through these things called Birkeland currents, and whenever it come into the atmosphere, it spread out through these things called Peterson currents. And these Peterson currents basically electrified the atmosphere, which is the ionosphere. The ionosphere created this anomalous plasma everywhere. And so this is why we were seeing Jersey drones popping up in the sky in 2024 and 2025. And everybody's like, what are these crazy things appearing out of nowhere?
Gotcha.
So that's what that was. It was anomalous plasma that was flowing throughout the atmosphere, and these things were just popping up everywhere. So those things, by the way, they are demons. They are the offspring of fallen angels, right? So they need this plasma as a corporeal overlay, a form that they can inhabit in order to materialize into this world. The reason that they need this plasma as a corporeal overlay, as like a vessel, is because basically they exist in the form of noble gases, essentially. They exist in the form of, no, let me rephrase that. They exist in the form of energy, like pure energy, negative energy, dark matter. And they use noble gases because basically noble gases can't combust when interacting with other things. So noble gases is what makes up, like there's noble gases in the inside of complex plasma. And then complex plasma is like this supercomputer that has a crystalline lattice within it. And in the center of all those crystalline lattices is this silicon chip. And this is why you start seeing things about Google accessing parallel universes and all this other stuff, is because complex plasma is a supercomputer. It's just a computer, right? But the demons, they inhabit noble gases, and then they attach themselves to complex plasma. The complex plasma finds a magnetic field, and whenever it interacts with the magnetic field, it turns into an orb of light. And that orb of light is electromagnetic. It's an electromagnetic ball of energy, which can then pull from what I think, and this is a theory unique to me, I think, is it pulls from these ions from what happens during putrefaction, which is what happens when animals decompose and when they die and they decompose.
Okay. Yeah.
And not just animals, but vegetation as well.
Yeah.
And when anything decomposes, it releases ions and it releases gases. And those are just kind of stuck in this plasma-like state, this soup of ions and this soup of gas, right? And these things can pull from the putrefied ions of those dead, decomposing organic materials. So like if it's flying, if this magnetic ball of energy, this orb, is flying through a swamp, it's going to pull from like the dead remains of deer and fish and lizards and all these other
accumulation of everything.
the plant life and stuff like that. And so that's why these Bigfoot smell, and that's why all these different cryptids smell terribly. They smell like skunks and stuff, is because
like a dumpster. Yeah, because it's all the shit together. Yeah,
they literally just pulled a bunch of stuff together and created this creature. And that's why people can never explain what they're seeing, is because they're looking at an amalgamation of like different animals put together. And so that's the rub of it, man. I mean, that's what it is. It's if you hear David Grush talking about this, he calls it, he says there's a continuum, which means a continuous, never changing. It's like the electromagnetic spectrum. It just goes from one color to the next, right? That's a continuum of corporeal, which is in physical form, and he says it's from anything that has a physical form all the way to plasmoid, sentient plasmoid life. So that right there tells you everything. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. He's saying that it starts off as this like energy, and it becomes a corporeal type of a form, and then it can shift into anything. It can shift into anything it wants, and then it also can shift back into this plasma life, which is what it starts out as.
So
So
how would that explain like physical like beings? You know what I'm saying? Like I'm trying to think of like in the simplest way for just listeners or whatever, you know, it's like I love everything you're saying because I think there's a bunch of different layers to this disclosure stuff. But then it's like, you know, when people think of this, they put that programming in your head of like the little green men or the whatever, you know, it's go watch Fire in the Sky or you're going to get a finger in the butt and get probed and shit, you know? And it's like, what is that side of it then? You know what I mean? Oh,
so there are no different types of entities. There's only one entity. It's a demon,
right,
and
right. So
it
so
shifts
that's
into everything. It's so there
the
is no
demon is the
grays.
energy then. So right, like it can just make it
Yes,
like morph itself into something, right? That's kind of what I was getting at.
yes,
Okay,
yes. These
gotcha.
are the skinwalkers. These are the things that have been. These are the tricksters of humanity for forever,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's what they're doing. They're trying to trick people into giving up their vessels, allowing them in. They create things. They trick humans into creating things like Stonehenge, these stone circles, because stone circles is what encircles or entraps
Yes.
magnetic energy. It traps that magnetic energy into a vortex of energy, and these are also usually located at the intersections of these ley lines, which
Mm-hmm.
are, you know,
We've
basically
talked
what.
about that before, like the pyramids. Why are they pointed up? You know, like yes.
Right. So no, what that essentially does is it helps, again, it traps that energy into a one spot.
Mm-hmm.
And at certain times of the day when it's just dusk and dawn, when the sun's going up or coming up, and then when the sun's going down, this is their time to come into this reality, because this is when the sun is weakening. And as it weakens, these things kind of bond together quickly, and they find these portal locations, which are these Stonehenges and places like that, and then they come into this reality. There's a reason I'm saying all this. I mean, I don't want to go into all of it, I guess, but essentially, like, the earth is a giant magnet, permanent magnet, and so is the sun. And when they are crossing over each other at a certain time of day, it is they're becoming into a harmonic resonance with each other, and then that harmonic resonance creates like an impact, like an electromagnetic pulse that hits the earth, and that pulse shoots out basically these earth energies, these telluric currents, and it kind of activates these fault lines and these fissures and the volcanoes, all of which have magnetite in it.
Mm-hmm.
Magnetite, inside of magnetite, is noble gases. So you're releasing demons out of the noble gases as well. I mean, out of the magnetite as well. So
Mm.
telluric currents are being released from the crust of the earth. They're coming out from volcanoes and all that. And then they're flowing along the earth to these intersecting portal locations. And
Yeah.
that gives it more of a perfect storm of bringing these things into this reality. I know I'm kind of going all over the place because this is
No,
a
no,
lot of
you're cool.
information.
I'm loving it. But it's also like, you know, it sound like a little kid, I guess, but it's like you're like you said, opening a portal or something. It's these things are coming out to play. And think of like when you go watch a movie like The Thing or something, you know, digging in Antarctica, and then you dig under X amount of ice that hasn't been disturbed in thousands of years or whatever. You're almost like opening a time capsule of something that was literally buried. You know, when you're messing with these ley lines, these energy areas and stuff, like it's kind of like the don't go digging in the Indian cemetery in a way kind of thing, if you will, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly right. You're unlocking, like the sun does this naturally, but there are there. So this is why I think a lot of these national parks exist, is because I think that they are
Yes.
all portal locations. Like they're basically hiding these heavily magnetically anomalous areas that are essentially allowing these demons to come into our reality.
And why do people miss just go missing all the time in
Yeah.
those national parks? And yeah, they have different stipulations on their searches and stuff. Yeah. Weird.
Yeah, dude, I've been doing these deep dives on these very famous paranormal cases, and every one of them. And it's funny because I had a former sheriff for the area I grew up in call me, or he messaged me and he asked me to call him, and we talked. And he's like, everything you were saying lines up with an unsolved string of murders that happened on this one area that we called the line of death. And I looked it up,
Ooh.
and where he had this line of death happen at, where there's like all these kids went missing and all these people were dying and stuff. There was a lot of like satanic stone circles and stuff like that with pentagrams and stuff in it.
Mm.
And essentially, what I discovered, I said, just give me a general region. He said, okay. And he gave me a region where there was a fault line. And on that fault line was essentially the straight line, the straight fault line. And that was exactly
Mm-hmm.
where the line of death was. And so there are, if you look at all these past paranormal cases, the Betty and Barney Hill case, the Travis Walton abduction, if you look at places like Poverty Point, all these other places that are well known to have like circle structures and all these other paranormal activities that are happening, strange energies like the vortex in Sedona and all that stuff. All you got to do is go to the USGS aeromagnetic and gravity anomaly maps, and you'll see exactly where these things are. You'll see exactly where these anomalous things are happening,
Dude,
because
yeah.
what these maps are essentially are showing is variations in the magnetic field of that particular spot. So what that means is like there's likely heavy magnetite and different things that are going on underneath the crust that are causing these variations in the Earth's magnetic field.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, Betty and Barney Hill's case, there is obviously it's in a national forest where it happens. It's
Missing
also,
time.
yeah, there was of course there was missing time, but there's a lot of granite in that area. There was fault lines. There was extinct volcanoes right on top of where they were. I mean, right below where they were abducted at. There's flowing
Weird.
water. Flowing water is always nearby, and
Conduit,
then
yeah.
some of these rivers, like in South Carolina, we have a place called the Black River. The reason it's called the Black River is because it has black sands, and black sands has magnetite in it. It's made mostly of magnetite. And so you get a combination of all these things, and then you enter uh, uh, when you add in the solar terrestrial activity of solar
Mm-hmm.
flares, you're creating this like perfect storm of energy,
Right.
and
So
these
like
crazy things are
magnetite,
happening.
obviously, is it like some kind of magnetic material or something? So you got water and electricity, some kind of magnetized, conductor, obviously, and then you've got the light from above, the source of, yeah, dude, it's just crazy. It's like that. It's so weird that these things line up like that. Like, but
And
yeah,
they
continue.
do. No, they absolutely do, man. And the weird part about it is whenever I looked into the swamp gas case, which is the famous, you know,
Yeah.
what's his name? J. Allen Hynek went out to Michigan in 1966 to investigate all of this flap of UFO sightings that happened over the course of a week in Michigan. Everybody was seeing these crazy things. He goes out and investigates by himself. Now he was in charge of Project Blue Book at the time. He goes out and he starts investigating, and basically he determines that it's just swamp gas. And everybody's like, that's crazy. That's a stupid thing to say. Why would it be swamp? That it was clearly it was aliens. And what happened was, I'm turning down my phone just in case the alarm goes off. I'm
You're
sorry for
fine.
that. But what essentially happened was, he got together with 11 scientists from the University of Michigan, and he's like, what can be possibly happening over these swamps? And all these 11 scientists were saying the same thing. They were like, well, there's decayed vegetation that's releasing these gases, and it's causing like these flares to go off, basically like these little, they call them willow of the wisp, which are these
Mm-hmm.
like orbs essentially that are flying around. So all these gases are combusting and being released, or from the decaying animals and decaying vegetation, and it's releasing all this stuff into the air. And this is what's causing the swamp gas sightings of the different colored lights and orbs and stuff. So he writes this up in his report, and he tells everybody this is what it is. So Gerald Ford at the time, who was a senator of Michigan at the time, was like, up in arms. He's like, it has to be something else. It can't just be gas. It can't just be swamp gas. So a little bit later, J. Allen Hynek goes out on TV and he's like, I was wrong. It was definitely not swamp gas and all this stuff. So he retracted what he said about it being swamp gas. This was after he basically retired from Project Blue Book. So the point of that is that I think that he realized, oh crap, I was telling them what is actually going on with these things. Is the fact that it's not just swamp gas. It is literally plasma. They're morphing into a plasma entity, and then they're morphing into this reality. That's what it was.
It takes like an outside opinion. It makes me think of X-Files. You got Mulder and Scully. Scully would be the scientist in that situation, telling you this is the logical blah 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 explanation, whether you like it or not. And then he seems more like the skeptic, like the Mulder that's like, maybe it is that, maybe it's not that, maybe two things are right at the same time. It's like, but there's that weird like kind of retraction of it, like you're saying, where we see that in all these cases because they start getting a lot of attention, and it's like, no, never mind. We was just fooling about that, Anyways, did you see the Dow this week? It's like, well, so it is just strange time that all this stuff is going on, and it's like, I mean, I make a sarcastic remark, but are we going to get Bigfoot next? I mean, like in a disclosure thing, because these are all similar weird things of energies and orbs and different anomalies and non-scientific answerable. I mean, there's a scientific explanation, but there's a dogma in science is what I'm getting at. But it just seems weird that they're wanting to tell us about strange things, like they're just trying to save face almost. I don't know. I think maybe they're giving us some real stuff, but I'm still not trusting of it. You know what I mean?
No, they're not giving us anything. And if they were, they would admit everything I'm talking about, because what else was happening in 1966? The week that all this stuff happened, which was like March 12th or something like that, through the 20th of 1966, there was also a massive solar flare that was happening. Coronal mass ejections were hitting the Earth at the time.
Interesting.
And you can look back on all of these things throughout history. 1947 with Roswell, it was another major solar storm. So what you start to see a pattern that every 11 years we go through what's called a solar maximum. The solar maximum, it is like basically a reversal of the sun. So the sun gets all twisted up, and then it flips its polarity, and then it spews a bunch of plasma at the Earth. And this happens every 11 years. And then after it does that, the anomalous stuff happens, and then it starts going down. And as it goes down, you hit what's called solar minimum. Now, solar minimum is interesting too, because at the end of a solar maximum, which is the solar minimum, you start getting talk all the time, and weird things happen about population reductions and stuff like that. So 2019, December 2019, which is when the C word started, right?
Mm-hmm.
The famous thing that happened in 2020. So that started in December 2019, which happens to be when the solar minimum basically hit the bottom point of the solar cycle, right? So they start talking about, or they start trying to draw down the population. They start trying to reduce the population. And I think that's in preparation for 2024, 2025, which is when solar maximum happens. Well, the next solar minimum, 2030. And we already know that there's going to be a population reduction in 2030.
Ooh.
And so this happens. It's a cycle. We get all this anomalous activity. We also go through this as humans. We go through this up and down cycle. Our consciousness, and you can maybe, I don't know the numbers on your show, but the numbers on my show they were crushing in 2024, 2025. And all of a sudden 2026 hits and the numbers fall off big time.
I did have that like in the first 3 or 4 months of this year. I was like, what the hell happened? And, it's like, It's like 2.5, I'm at 3 years now, but I was like 2.5 years in, and it was weirdly like January to March-ish or something. Everything just got really like flatline. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to keep going, but yeah, continue.
Yeah. And the reason why is because when there is electromagnetic energy happening in the ionosphere, remember, The magnetosphere is being squished from the solar flares. It's causing all this anomalous activity in the ionosphere. And it's affecting our we're electromagnetic beings. We have our hearts and our brains are electromagnetic.
Like positive and negative, exactly. Like your energy of the day.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So at this time, and this has been proven by scientists or whatever you want to call them, astrophysicists, whoever studies this stuff, this was proven that during solar cycles or during solar flares specifically, it causes us to get a very conspiratorial. We become like fight or flight response kicks in with us. We start having weird dreams around this time. Everybody thinks that the end of the world is going to happen and all this. Well, this is why I think governments of the world try to keep this information away from us, because if we all started panicking and thinking that the world's going to end, then we're starting to, take all these resources and all this other stuff. This is why I think these billionaires were building bunkers and all those kinds of things.
You just took the words out of my mouth. That's why they're doing it, and they don't want us to do it. Yes.
Yeah. They were taking all the resources and they were building bunkers because they thought that in 2024, 2025, there were going to be some kind of crazy, because this is one of the biggest solar storms we've had on record. And again, this is whenever, we had all these flooding in Texas. We had all these weird things, these fires happening all over the place and all this. And I think that was all coronal mass ejection related. And so if people knew that solar flares was causing all this chaos around the earth, and it's been doing it forever, because remember the Carrington event, which is a major plasma storm that happened in 1857 or whatever, it was a solar storm. It was a solar maximum that caused mass chaos. And actually, in my opinion, I think that there was a advanced civilization that was wiped out because of it.
We just synced up, because I was like, bro, wait a minute, that's like timing with some fucking racing old world history stuff. But yeah, continue, man, you're cooking.
Yeah, for sure, man. And all of these solar cycles, you can look at them. They all line up with major events like 2000, 2001, which was supposed to be Y2K. That was a solar maximum. Then 2012 was a solar maximum. The Mayan calendar, the world was going to end in 2012 and all that. And so it's a cyclical thing. But also we start having these every 11 years, we get very conspiratorial, our brains get all fried and crazy. We're like, oh, something's happening.
We're energized. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's affecting our consciousness. It really is. And so people start thinking that something's going to happen. And so I think that governments of the world know that if they ride out the storm, literally ride it out, that we'll go back to that NPC version of ourselves where we just like, I don't really care about anything. I'm just going to go watch my kid play soccer or whatever.
Yeah.
And grocery shop.
What can I do about it? Yeah.
Yeah. And then come 2036, we'll start seeing upswing in the, oh my God, the world's going to end again. And you're going to start hearing more of that stuff. But I really think that demons are essentially have a hand in all of this. And I think that during solar minimum, whenever it's less chaotic, these entities are more like solidified, if you will, in this reality.
Yeah.
And they're telling leadership to, excuse me, basically like, we need to get rid of populations because populations is the problem. There's too many people in the world. If in the event of something going to happen, all these people are going to take everything from you. And so you have one faction, which is the government faction. They're probably hearing this from these non-human intelligences, which that's what plasma is. Plasma is sentient. It is a supercomputer, just like I said. So
Hillary Clinton, friend of the show, she's listening right now. We're both on the hit list.
No, dude, listen, man, these people are evil. They're working for evil. And that's what it's all about for them is, Sam Tripoli talks about on the show all the time. They already have all the money. They already have the power. What more could they possibly want? And it's like, they kind of want our souls. They want us to like, they either want our vessels for these entities or they want us wiped off the earth.
Hear me out on a little schizo thought I just had. It's like, okay, so if this is a timeline that they know this, so, waning, waxing period, whatever you want to call it, right? They realize that this is a manipulatable thing, basically, and people are cattle or sheep or whatever whatever euphemism, we are manipulatable. As long as there's a leader, we'll follow the leader for the most part. In the few strays that go off, well, we get rid of the strays. That's us, the podcasters. But my point is so if we know that they can, or not everybody knows, but if they're able to do that, and there's also the fact that time and a clock and the watch on my hand right now and everything else, this is a man-made thing as well. It's like a manipulation of this like current, this energy literally, but they're creating this thing where they know that the energy of the sun and the moon, which creates the next day or the whatever, the next week and all this shit. Like I said, hear me out on this little tangent, but it's like they almost have known this forever, and since the beginning of like time and keeping dates, it coincides with this shit, because how else would they be able to keep this on like a structure? You kind of hear me out where I'm going with that, where like they almost had to create a time structure to be able to realize like, oh, tomorrow is when the shit can start again, and we're going to take over the masses again and tell them to population control. And it's almost like their timer goes off on their phone or something. You know what I mean? But they're the ones that created the manipulated the time to do it in a way.
Well, they're being, I think, again, manipulated and told that these things are going to happen, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I really believe that that's what's happening. Again, when these ancient peoples built these Stonehenges and stuff like that, I really believe they were being tricked by these entities. These entities were telling them, "I'm your family. I know you, man.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, listen, you got to trust me. I'm your granddad, right? Remember that time we went fishing?
Yep.
Because you got to remember, these things are energy. They exist around us all the time. They're watching everything we do. They know us. They know our likes and dislikes. They know what your favorite beer is or whatever, right?
Because
They know
we're
what
predictable.
Yeah. And so when they go up to these people, remember that all of these churches and graveyards were built on ley lines because people thought that they could communicate with the dead in order to enhance their current lives. That's why graveyards and churches are built on these ley lines, is because they thought they were talking to familiar spirits, essentially.
And church bells were used for energy conductors as well. So yeah, dude, yes, manipulating that power.
Yeah, so that's what they were doing. So they were, I'm your granddaddy, build a stone circle and we'll come back and see you every night. And so people were doing that. They were building these temples, these churches, and they were they thought they were communicating with their loved ones, but they were actually communicating with demons. They're communicating with tricksters, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're communicating with Hermes, the fallen angel Hermes. And so this is why you get a lot of the staff, the medical staff. What is it? The caduceus.
The caduceus, yeah.
Yeah. With two snakes. It's because it's a male and female energy snake. And the snakes are the energy. That's where you get that from. People used to go to these sites and they would be healed by people like Merlin, who was a magician, and he had a staff, you know what I mean? And this is why you have the staff and the two snakes around it, is because they thought that they were being healed by him, but it might have been energies in the earth that was, electromagnetic energy that was doing that, or a combination of changing your consciousness or your psyche or whatever to make you think that you're being healed. So I think that a lot of these churches and these temples and these stone circles and these dolmens and everything else were used to heal and to also communicate with their loved ones. But again, they've been manipulated for these people, and we're currently going through that. You can see that with guys like Stephen Greer with close in, CE5 events, where he's having meditation events with entities. You can see it with Chris Bledsoe. He's going out. He's like, they're beautiful, loving creatures, and it's like, yeah, dude, they're tricking you. They've been tricking you. You know what I mean? They're not loving. If they were, they would stop everything bad that's going on in the world right now.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That powerful, that intuitive, that giving and all that. Exactly. They wouldn't, and the Bledsoe family is great, but it's also like, reference AAA, it's like, why do random people in the fucking woods and redneck dudes and stuff that most people are going to never, like when you see something happens in the news and it's in the ghetto and they pick the worst person in the world to be the person on site getting interviewed, and I'm not saying anything directly about the Bledsoes. I just mean like, there's always this weird, like, it's easy to discredit somebody when they're, in a lower class of people. I'm a redneck. I don't give a fuck, but I'm just saying, like, why would they come tell this one random person the secrets of the world or what it's just manipulation. Like you said, it's them preying on these things. And that explains why different people in different regions of the world see different things because it goes to kind of what your philosophy, what your beliefs really are. And, you also have, they're going to be, with this disclosure idea, I can't help but think of just distrust and, Project Bluebeam and shit like that right around the corner. We have, Zionism and Christian nationalism and all this crazy shit popping off all over the world at the same time as alien disclosure. And I'm like, back to what I was saying earlier, like I weirdly feel like all of this shit is weirdly related.
Yeah,
AI
it
and
definitely
data
is.
centers and beast system and CBDCs and social credit scores, like all of this shit is like we're unlocking the beast in some massive computer.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are starting to wake up. You know what I mean? And it's a
Yeah.
slow waking up process, but they're starting to wake up to. I mean, think about this. How many times have you seen Will Ferrell or one of these guys on a podcast over the last couple months? It's become like, oh, that's the new thing to promote a movie is to go on all these podcasts and look like a normal person. I'm just a normal person selling a movie,
Yeah.
right? Because we have the platforms now, and this is why they silence us, because even though you and I might not have this huge reach as some of these like Joe Rogan or whatever, we do have influence in some way. We're talking to people, people are listening,
Mm-hmm.
and so they don't have that anymore. It's authentic that's coming from us.
We're being
It's not.
honest.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're being honest, we're being real, and so people can see it more, they resonate with it more. So people are becoming more, they resonate more with real authentic truth than this phony media, government controlled, information controlled, propaganda stuff.
Dave Smith says
So
it best. He says the modern currency is honesty, like with podcasts.
it
The
is,
modern
man.
currency is honesty, and that's why all these people like Will Ferrell and all these movies flop and stuff nowadays is because people are, it's the Wizard of Oz. We pulled the curtain back and realized, holy shit, it's not the Great Powerful Oz. It's a 2 foot tall fucking midget, hiding back here. I'd kick his ass, like he's not
Well,
that powerful.
well, think about the idea of a celebrity, first of all, right? What is a celebrity? A celebrity is somebody
A
who has no,
star.
yeah, he's a star. Well, he doesn't become a star until he siphons some energy from you. And so we're all out there clapping like seals. Give me your autograph. We love you,
Yep.
Will, or whatever. And we've taken that energy back from them in a lot of ways. And 2020 kind of was the start of that, where we've taken that energy back and we said, nah, we're good. We're not going to watch your stupid videos and your stupid movies anymore. Certainly we will to a certain degree with
Yeah.
some things,
It
but
showed a few real ones too, though. Also,
yeah,
and 2020 on, you saw a few the people in Hollywood that you're like, oh wow, they're not all satanic pedophiles. A few of these people, I mean, they're literally actors, but I'm just saying, like, we saw the demonization of Chris Pratt and some of these other, Mel Gibson years ago, and some of these people. You're like, hey, wait a minute, maybe these guys are the normal people, and they're not in the cool kids club, and that's why they're trying to kick their asses out.
exactly. Well, again, they were in a way they were kind of like demons, these celebrities, these stars,
Yeah.
where they were siphoning that energy and it ran out. And so the real ones that are, it's like I'm sure there's a fairy tale analogy to it, the tortoise and the hare or whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
where, I think that we all have a candle that burns slow. And if we burn that candle too fast, then we sort of die quicker. I don't know if that makes any sense, or we lose our energy, we lose our spirit a little bit quicker. And I think that if you give your energy to something else, to some other person, you're willingly giving all your energy to that entity, that,
Mm-hmm.
celebrity or whatever. And it sucks the life out of you, but it also sucks the life out of him because he's burning his candle at a much brighter thing than what he was supposed to.
Like a
And
compressor on an air conditioner trying to keep up when you're trying to
yeah,
crank that motherfucker. Yeah,
yeah,
it's like that's almost like your 27 club and your rock stars and stuff like that
right,
because they
exactly.
go hard in the paint. Too young, too fast. Whatever it is, too young, too dumb, too fast, or whatever kind of thing. It's like they're exerting all of their energy in one big cannon burst instead of spreading it out.
Well, I think with those people in particular, it was more or less like they were influencing people, telling people don't give your energy to somebody else. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that they were killed in a lot of ways because of that.
Okay, that's a
They
good
were they
point.
were they were saying keep your energy for yourself. They were spreading mostly messages of pretty much love yourself, love your neighbor, love
True.
everybody, that kind of stuff. So it was a very Christian Jesus like message that they were spreading, and the industries and stuff were eating them up. The industries were the one telling them, you should go siphon more energy, you should go do this, and you should do that. And
Right.
that's what it eventually led to their, whether that be drug abuse demise or suicide demise or whatever. I think
Hmm.
that I think in a lot of ways they were probably off because they have this natural charisma that cannot be controlled. This is why you get the gate program and all this other
Yes,
stuff.
sir.
And so when you have people that can't be controlled, the only way to control them is to get rid of them.
Yep.
So,
Yep. Or to brainwash them. And
yep.
then that's the MK Ultra files. Dude, let's do this again, and let's do the gate program. I was in the gate program shortly. I didn't have any of the weird stuff. I remember the pink drink. I remember the hearing test. I remember some of the little weird things and the, spaced off cubicles and stuff like that. But I don't know, a couple years later, I grew my hair out, started smoking weed and drinking too young and fucking playing music. So next thing I was in the gifted and tarded program, But my point is yeah, dude, let's do a gate program episode next, because man, that's a funky rabbit hole people are starting to realize now.
Yeah, man. Anytime, anything you want, man. I love coming on your show. Like I said, I really mean that because I just, really and truthfully, I just in general enjoy talking about this stuff
Yeah.
because I think it's very important to get out the message to everybody I can, and talk about this in a way that nobody else is talking about it. A lot of people are using Chat GPT for everything to automate their scripts for podcasts and stuff like that. And I do use it sometimes for like research or something like that, but I try not to do like scripts for my show. You know
I
what I
make
mean?
a
Like,
thumbnail with Chat GPT, and that's it. I make just a
yeah.
cool thumbnail, and I'm like, all right, I'll talk shit, but I'll just make that one thing. And there's people using it to fucking answer medical questions nowadays. I'm like, I'm not going that far with it.
Well, there are people who use it for songs on their show, or
Yeah.
I had a buddy of mine send me a full episode he did when that was an AI voice. And he's like, "What do you think?" And I was like, "It's awful. Like, why
Oh
would you
shit.
even allow that to happen?"
Well,
And
actually, I'm gonna be honest with you. My intro song is like an
see,
80s banger AI intro song. It's like a 25-second, and it's funny because Tripoli's using it now with like Sam's Corner on Doom Scrolling and
yeah,
Young Christian Warriors. And mine sounds like a 1987 badass hair metal fucking chorus, and I'm like screaming Talking Stitt. And I'm like, dude, this is fucking cool. But
yeah, but
I'm with you.
you're
It's
a
like
musician, dude. Well, you could
I
create
know
your own. I mean, it's
I
like,
can, but I got 3 kids and I don't have
I
enough room
know,
in
I
my
know,
house.
I
That's We're about to buy like
know.
15 acres of land, about 20 or something like that in the next
Nice, man.
literally possible couple weeks, cross my fingers. But yeah, it's like that's one of the things I'm gonna finally have my own fucking recording studio and shit. And be like, no more AI music. I do it myself.
No, but you're
Bradley.
talented enough. I've seen you on Instagram, some of the stuff you've posted and everything. You're a super talented musician, and there's no reason for you to not have your own sound or whatever. And by the way, the intro things, like I have an intro for my show, but I'm cutting it off. I'm stopping it because these algorithms nowadays, they won't even, like, if somebody's not listening in the first 15 to 30 seconds, then
Oh, interesting.
they won't
Yeah.
show your show to anybody else. So that's sort of changing the way we set up our podcast as well. But
That's a
yeah,
good
man.
point, because I recently brought mine back like a month and a half ago or so. But I also saw numbers coming back up too.
Oh,
So
really?
it was like, okay, well, so I don't. But you might have a point with that, because
Yeah.
I just recently decided, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna put that intro song back on there again. But Bradley, dude, you're awesome, man. You can keep up
Thanks,
with
man.
me being a schizo retard and just jumping all over the place, but somehow we do the Donald Trump, the weave. We bring it all back around, and we make it fun. And Bradley, dude, I appreciate your time. Let's do this again on the Gate program next, and remind everybody where they can find you. I'll have your links in the show notes anyways, but I'll let you give a plug.
Yeah, first of all, you're way better at this than me. I just have ideas and things, and I try to get them on recorded. But I'm not good at the intros and the outros and all that other stuff. But yeah, you guys can find me at theawakenpodcast.com. If to make it easy for you, that's where you can find everything. If you want to go to somewhat of a link tree, that's awakenpodcast.com/links, and that's where you can find all the links to my show. I am on Spotify and Apple. I just started really uploaded on YouTube about 6 months ago or so. It's growing over there. I encourage people to go over to YouTube and subscribe, but also definitely go over to Spotify and Apple, because that's where I make the most money in terms of ads to keep my show going. And if you don't mind, give the show a 5-star review, and also leave a comment and share the show, whatever you got to do, because that's kind of how we continue to get the message out there, and we kind of skirt around the algorithms. When you do all that stuff, you're telling the algorithms, I want to see more of this, and my friends want to see more of this.
Yep.
So the reviews, the thumbs up, the subscribe buttons, the bell notifications, all that stuff it means a lot. It's kind of the currency we work in podcasting. So yeah, do that for me, do that for Derek on his show as well. And yeah, thank you, man. Thank you for having me. And thank you to the listeners for putting up with me for an hour or whatever it's been.
Dude, it's awesome, man. We're gonna do this again soon. You know, like I said, the last time we did this was a few months ago, and the time before that was like over a year between it. And we're like, no, we're not gonna do that again. But yeah, dude, we can talk anytime. And guys, let's just go out there and BF some algorithms and just start pushing the truth out there and all that fun stuff. And tell your friends that don't want to listen to shit and your boomer family members that think we gotta stand with Israel. What's rest in peace, Lindsey? Rest in piss, whatever. Fuck him. But anywho, yeah, you know, we stand for you. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out, Stitt-Heads. Bye bye.